Namaste, Vanakkam, Swagatam, Buongiorno, and it's a wonderful moment when today I can share with all of you, sharing through the yogic self-care. That is a outreach program, online outreach program of the Citer of Sri Balaji Vidyapeeth. Citer, as some of you will be knowing, is the Center for Yoga Therapy Education and Research that was founded on November 1st, 2010, and now into its 10th year of existence at one of the most innovative and unique medical universities of the world, Sri Balaji Vidyapeeth. Sri Balaji Vidyapeeth is a deemed to be university which is having medical colleges where people are training to be medical doctors. It has nursing colleges. It has dental college, allied health programs, programs in pharmacy, programs in physiotherapy. And under the allied health, we have the SBB Aim High initiative, which is one of the best practices of Sri Balaji Vidyapeeth, to introduce into the medical system the adjuvant collaborative systems of yoga therapy, music therapy, and other such therapies. During the COVID-19 pandemic, during this time where people are in lockdown globally, we felt it is an important occasion to start sharing online. Sharing online for the sake of self-care. Because it is important that we take care of the self. This is not the ego, but this is the self as the individuality. And for that individuality to be sustained, maintained, and if it has been lost, regained, yoga plays a vital role in physical, mental, social, spiritual well-being. So with a focus on wellness, a focus on salutogenesis, which is a focus on wellness and wholesomeness, rather than a focus on disease, we have been offering these programs, the yogic self-care programs, for the past few weeks. And our Citer team has also been strengthened by our guest faculty who have been presenting guest sessions, such as Lee Blaschke from Australia, one of the pioneers of yoga therapy down under. My dear Matthew Taylor from the USA, who gave an amazing session also on pain and perspective. And we are looking forward to some more sessions from Laura in Spain, Anandi, who is in Cyprus, and in Pondicherry, my own Dharmapatni Yogacharini Devasena Bhavanani, who has been offering many sessions. We are also looking forward to other people sharing their sessions with us to share with more. Because our philosophy is sharing is caring. This morning, the topic that I have chosen to share is a topic on the Bhastrika Pranayamas. And these Bhastrika Pranayamas, especially with a focus on the Gitananda tradition, the Rishi culture, Ashtanga Yoga tradition. Because the Gitananda tradition, the Rishi culture, Ashtanga Yoga tradition, has an extended series of such practices. An extended series of such practices that are available for our self-care and our sadhana, yoga sadhana. So when we use the term Bhastrika, it implies a bellows breath. So just as the blacksmith had a bellows, and whenever the bellows are pressed, the air goes. The Bhastrika is a bellows breath. So basically, when you want to understand what is Bhastrika, it is a bellows, which means that there is a element of forcefulness in it. So the element of forcefulness in the breath is the Bhastrika component. This is also similar to instruments like the harmonium, where you press and there is a bellows inside also, and that enables then the music to be produced. So it could fan the fire as in the blacksmith, or it could fan the music and enable the music to manifest as in the harmonium and other such instruments based on that principle. The Bhastrikas are usually an explosive breath. So there will be an element of and the Bhastrika could be using the nose, and when we use the nose as the medium of the Bhastrika, it is normally called Nasagra or Nasarga Bhastrika, using the nose. So where through the nose we are performing a bellows breath, a forceful breath. So the nose becoming the agent, the vehicle through which the practice is occurring. So it becomes Nasarga Bhastrika. For example, if we were to do the commonly found traditional Bhastrika, focusing on the thoracic region, and where both the inhalation and exhalation are through the nose, and there is that the focus is on the thoracic. So there is that movement at the thoracic level, and there is that. Okay, that would be the Nasagra Bhastrika, where through the nose we are using. We also in the Gitananda tradition use an explosive blasting out, which is a Bhastrika through the mouth. For example, you could breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth. So there is and this is another type of Bhastrika which becomes then a Mukha. Mukha means the mouth. So Mukha can mean the face, Mukha can mean the mouth. When we use the mouth as the device, as the vehicle, as the agent of the Bhastrika, it becomes a Mukha. So what I've been doing is breathing through the nose and out through the mouth. So it's a. So one was in the nose, out the nose. The second is in the nose. So there is one time you are taking through the nose, and then one time you are breathing out through the mouth. So it becomes a Nasarga Mukha Bhastrika. So the first type was the Nasarga Bhastrika, in and out through the nose. The second type, Nasarga Mukha Bhastrika, where you breathe through the nose and out through the mouth. The explosive exhalation through the mouth. It's not the inhalation. It is an exhalation through the mouth happening. So there is a. We then have another practice which is a foundational practice of the Gitananda tradition called the Mukha Bhastrika. Now in the Mukha Bhastrika, which is a very important cleansing practice, we are going to take in one long deep breath. So you are going to breathe in low, mid, high, and then you pucker your mouth up as if it is the Kaki Mudra, the crow's beak gesture. And after you breathe in, with the puckered mouth, what you do is that you make this explosive Bhastrika through the puckered mouth. So it's a Kaki Mudra, and you are blasting out, but multiple blasts. In the Nasarga Mukha Bhastrika, it was one in, one out. It was finished. Here there is one breath in. It's a grand yogic breathing. Mahat Yoga Pranayama is done. So there is a low, mid, high. And then the blasting out is multiple. So it is a... So you are not... But it is one in and multiple blasts out. So it is very important to remember in the Mukha Bhastrika, you have only breathed in once, but you are blasting out multiple times. Short blasts. And in the Mukha Bhastrika, when we normally do this, it is also called the Dhauti Pranayama. Dhauti means a cleansing. And there are many versions of Dhauti, which use the water and air and other sticks, which were the reeds were used, the bamboo reeds. Nowadays we use rubber catheters and rubber tubes. So there are various versions of the Dhauti Kriya. This is called the Dhauti Pranayama because you are using the air as a cleansing agent. So here, as a Dhauti Pranayama, the Mukha Bhastrika is often used in our tradition. So we are breathing in, and then it is a... And what we are doing is we bend forward. When you bend forward, what you are doing is further you are compressing the abdomen, you are compressing the chest, the thoracic area, and you are making sure that the breath has been expelled as completely as possible. So in the Mukha Bhastrika, the focus is on multiple small exhalations through the Kaki Mudra. And these multiple small exhalations are aiming to completely empty as much as possible the air from the lungs. And this is why it is a very important cleansing practice. It's a cleansing pranayama. This is a pranayama that is very useful to get rid of the toxins. We constantly accumulated toxins in our system. This accumulation of toxins is because of faulty breathing. Most of the time we are not breathing properly. In fact, we are breathing at around less than 10% of our capacity. If our capacity were around 4 or 5 liters, we are breathing about 400-500 milliliters. That is all that we are breathing. So we are not breathing properly. First of all, shallow breathers. The human race is having a major disorder, and that is shallow breathing. So because of the shallow breathing, we are not enabling the toxins to be expelled, and hence we are poisoning our own self. So Mukha Bhastrika is a very effective pranayama in order to get rid of the self-poisoning. The self-toxination is being eliminated by the Mukha Bhastrika. It is also important because when you are breathing out this way, what you are doing is that you are expelling the excess carbon dioxide. When you don't breathe properly, especially when you don't exhale properly. And the problem, this happens because inhalation is normally an active process. Exhalation is by passive elastic recoil of the structures in the chest. So because of that, the exhalation is very limited in most people. Somehow they manage to breathe in, but when breathing out, they do not breathe out efficiently. And because you don't breathe out efficiently, there is a carbon dioxide poisoning happening. There is a self-toxination, intoxination of the self because we are not eliminating the toxins properly. And carbon dioxide in the blood plays a very important role in acidosis, which is making the system acidic. Now, our human blood is meant to be more on the alkaline side. Now, when that alkaline dominance of the blood which is supposed to be more on the alkaline side, when it starts to become relatively acidic, acidosis sets in. And this acidosis could be metabolic acidosis or respiratory acidosis. And one of the major reasons people go into this acidic nature, which predisposes to so many diseases. My father, Swami Geethananda, used to say that all diseases are based on acidosis, not alkalinosis. And he said it is when the blood starts to move towards the acidic side from an alkaline side, this is relatively acidic. Okay, it doesn't go straight down into acidic. The only real acidic thing in us is in our stomach, where we have the acids, the peptic acids that are enabling the digestive system to break down food. So it is not that suddenly you have gone totally acid when we say that it's relative acidosis. Because still you're in around 7 plus, which is very much an alkaline situation. But compared, say from 7.4, you're becoming 7.3, 7.2, 7.1. What is happening is the relative state of being alkaline is changing to a relative state of being more acidic. This is what we mean when we say acidosis. And the moment you are starting to go into an acidotic situation, the ketone bodies are formed, ketoacidosis. We hear about that with many of the metabolic disorders. This acidosis is basically breaking down our resistance. It is breaking down our capacity to deal with the environmental challenges, including what we are facing today, the COVID-19. It's one of the challenges. There have been challenges of pollution. Major issue has been pollution. Trying to breathe in cities like Delhi has been impossible for the last few years. And the one good thing that has come out of all of this is the air quality in Delhi has improved. So at least people can breathe now. Earlier, if you were teaching somebody pranayama in Delhi, there used to be a cartoon, you could be arrested for trying to kill them, because breathing deeply in Delhi would be killing people. The pollution was so high. Irrespective of the external pollution, if our system is strong, we can deal with it. But if we are already on a relatively acidic state, we will not be able to deal with it. So what is being done in the Mukha Bhastrika? If you go back to it, multiple expulsions, not multiple inhalations. Multiple forceful exhalations are being used. So you are breathing in once, and then with the Kaki Mudra, anything between 10 to 20 times you are going to be exhaling as you come from the sitting down, bringing your head down to the ground. So you are exhaling. By coming down like this, you are again compressing, making sure that you are really exhaling all the air as much as you can, and you are getting rid of the excessive carbon dioxide that is contributing to the acidosis. So by performing the Mukha Bhastrika, we are helping the body move from that acidic state to a more alkaline state, where we can actually start to heal ourselves from within. That is yogic self-care. And the Mukha Bhastrika has the capacity to also strengthen the whole nervous system. Because the more acidic the system is, the more toxic we are, our nervous system starts to go into a weakness, neurasthenia, which is a weakness of the nerves. The whole nervous system goes into a weakness. In medicine, we talk about it as peripheral neuropathy. And this is why we give B complex vitamins and we give all sort of stuff. But we are not setting right the internal issue. And that is why when we do the Mukha Bhastrika, and yes, Kim, it is safe to do it daily. In fact, it is safe to do it at least 3 times daily. Because every time we do a pranayama practice, and I cannot remember any pranayama session by my father that didn't begin and end with a Mukha Bhastrika 3 rounds. It was sort of like a recording that was on automatic pilot in all his classes. He would say, okay, sit in Vajrasana. I'm not sitting in Vajrasana because I'm just explaining it. But when we are doing it, we sit in Vajrasana. Why Vajrasana? Because when you sit in Vajrasana, your spine is naturally erect. Your spine, the spinal alignment is automatically pushed into a healthy alignment. As opposed to when you sit cross-legged, there's a tendency to slouch. It is very easy to slouch in a cross-legged position, very difficult to slouch in Vajrasana. So automatically the spine is put in a place where it will automatically be aligned. It will automatically be erect. I'm not using the word straight because the spine needs curves. So it's not really going to be straight, but it can be erect. It can be aligned. Okay, in a healthy, harmonious alignment. And when you sit in the Vajrasana, automatically what is happening is the diaphragm has the space for its natural excursions down and up. The diaphragm goes down, you breathe in, the diaphragm comes up, you breathe out. People say, as you breathe in, the diaphragm goes down. No. The diaphragm goes down and that is why you breathe in. The diaphragm comes up and that's why you breathe out. We have it all mixed up. How many rounds are advisable, Ramdeep? Okay, fine. Minimum 3 rounds. 6 rounds could also be done. 9 would be the maximum. Because what happens is there is something called overdoing even the best things. And Indian culture tells us that even nectar, amrita, if taken in excess, becomes a poison. And this is a problem in modern times. If something is good, we think more of it is better and take as much of it as you can and it will be best and you kill yourself. So yes, this is a very important question. 3 rounds. In the Gitananda tradition, most of the time, any practice would be done 3 times. 3 is the number of manifestation. The first time you're just doing it. Second time you're starting to understand what you're doing. And in the 3rd round, you experience the practice. Anything after that is an add-on. So 3 minimum, 6 would be a good, because it's 3 done again, and 9 as 3 done 3 times. So 9 is a complete thing. It can be tough initially because you have to develop the respiratory muscle strength. And so many of our studies at JIPMER, the central government hospital, and then also at SITER of Sri Balaji Vidyapeeth, we have again and again seen that these practices enhance the muscular strength of the respiratory muscles, especially the intercostals. These muscles are muscles that go between your ribs. So between every 2 ribs, you have these muscles like this. And there's one group of muscles going like this, the internal, and you have the external, and they create this type of structure. And these muscles people are not using properly. They're not strong. Now, when you do this type of practice, the muscles, the inspiratory and expiratory intercostal muscles, they are being strengthened. You are working with them very effectively. And this is why your maximum inspiratory pressure and maximum expiratory pressure, which are dependent on these muscles, is always found to be enhanced when you do pranayama. So many studies we have reported from JIPMER, and it's again and again we have found. The other thing we found with the Mukha Bhastrika is, as would any Bhastrika for that matter, but this we have used extensively. When you do the Mukha Bhastrika, you are also strengthening your nervous system. We had already talked about neurasthenia and coming out of it and strengthening from neuropathy onwards. Yeah, here what you are doing is the central neuronal processing, the speed with which your nerves can work, is actually enhanced by this practice. And there are 2 papers we have published in indexed journals. They are on PubMed, and they will come up on Mukha Bhastrika. And Mukha Bhastrika, we initially did the study long back when we did it with school children. In fact, these were some of the kids from Yoganjali Natyalayam. In fact, I always tease Dayanidhi and Balaji that they were the subjects in that, and now they are doing the PhD with me. So it's very interesting how life keeps things coming back in circles. The circle of life, as they call it, it's actually a spiral, not a circle. It's always going upwards. But we did this work with school children, and we found that their reaction time was enhanced when you do Mukha Bhastrika. Now, this reaction time enhancement, you speed up the reaction time, you enhance the reaction time. Reaction time is the time taken for you to respond to a stimuli. For example, It may be a stimuli which is sound, like, somebody calls you and you turn. What is the time taken? It's in milliseconds, okay? Should be in milliseconds. Someone calls you and you respond. Something hits you and you turn. So it could be tactile, it could be visual. You see something, you see a stone coming towards you and you move out of the way. You see the ball coming towards you and you catch it if you're playing cricket or baseball or whatever you're playing. So the speed with which you can react to a visual, auditory or other stimuli. So we normally do our reaction time studies. Normally these studies are done with a visual stimulus and an auditory stimulus. And what we found was 9 rounds. We did 9 rounds. So coming back to that 9-round idea, we did 9 rounds of Mukhabhastrika, and we found that the reaction time, that is the speed of the neuronal conduction, how fast your nervous system is working, was enhanced in school children. And then many years later, because Dr. Meena, her love is for the special children. Children with special needs is the correct term, not special children, children with special needs. And we started doing work at the Sadai Special School run by Dr. Sugadam in Pondicherry, and now also working with the Satya School by Chitra Shah ma'am. And at that time, children who were receiving the yoga practices at Sadai, children with special needs, any form of, intellectual impairment, we gave them this practice. We taught them this practice. And in such kids, the change was tremendous, which means you are enhancing the neuronal processing even in children who have impaired intellectual development, which means that they can respond to stimuli better, which means their attention is going to be better, which means their memory is going to be better, their retention is going to be better, and you are actually enhancing their learning capabilities. And we have again done a recent study in children who had autism spectrum disorder, and yoga in helping them learn how to maintain dental hygiene. As part of it, we also did the reaction time again, and well, once again, history repeats itself. So the Mukhabhastrika is excellent practice to reduce the acidosis, which is part of all medical conditions. Ramdeep has been asking precautions for different medical condition. I'll come to the precaution part, but every medical condition can benefit from this for the simple reason, if you can correct acidosis, the body can heal itself better. So the question comes, what if somebody has hypertension, their blood pressure is already high, and you have them doing, well, there may be a slight rise in blood pressure. I do not deny it. So if somebody has a blood pressure which is really, really high, somebody has something like, say, 160, 170, 180 as systolic, and diastolic, more than 100, you may have to take it easy with them initially. But if the blood pressure is 140, 150 systolic and less than 100 diastolic, definitely this would be safe. I don't think anybody else would really have to worry about this too much, because it is an amazing practice, and it is a must for people who have breathing disorders, because people who have breathing disorders, the struggle is to breathe out effectively. And here you are helping them strengthen the muscles and breathe out effectively. So naturally all your lung function, pulmonary function tests will be enhanced, as again seen in so many of our studies. In people who have obstructive lung disorders, and again people who have diabetic lung, a study by Dr. Balaji, and COPD by Achyutan. These are practices we use regularly. So what is the Mukhabhastrika? Breathing in once, and not just, it is low, mid, high, have a full lung, Kaki Mudra, and until you are completely empty. You have to completely empty as much as you can do at that moment. Now in that process, when coming up, what we are going to do is that we are going to be then raising the head. When you first raise your head, don't breathe yet at this point. This is an opportunity for a rebirth. Okay, everybody wants, to have a different lifetime. They say, oh, if only I had a chance to do everything again and, make different choices, have a better husband, a better wife, a better child, a better job, or God knows what people want. Huh? We have what we need, okay? Life has given us what we need so that we can work out our karma. The best husband, wife, children, job, location, where we can work out our karma. But anyway, you want another life, here's a chance. Every time you go down and you do this, you have breathed out completely. Now there's a chance to be born again. So what you do is that you start to lift your head up. Why are you lifting your head? This is how the baby's head comes out of the mother's womb. So the birthing process, you first do this, and once you come here, now you take that first breath of life and you are. So you have blasted out and gone down and you have let go of everything. And here you're lifting your head, birthing, breathing in, taking a new life, a new breath, a new start. And you're coming up. And the breath is lifting you up. So in the Mukha Bhastrika, along with the practice, when you do it this way, you are also letting go of not just the physical toxins, mental toxins, emotional toxins, all that pent-up toxin that is killing you, poisoning yourself, you have let go of it. And when you come out of the Dharmic Asana, you are coming out with an opportunity for a new start. So the Mukha Bhastrika is one of the key practices, and this is a practice that in our tradition would be done 3 times before you start your pranayama practice, and after the pranayama practice you do it. Because during the pranayama practice, what happens is you have started breathing for the first time maybe in your life, because most people don't breathe. Especially mindfully, nobody breathes. People have no idea. No idea at all. You ask people, I challenge you. You cannot go out now. You cannot go out now because of the lockdown. But if you get a chance, whenever it comes, someday, hum honge kamiyab someday, okay? Yeah. When you get that chance, take a big piece of paper, like you make a survey, stand at the corner of the road and ask everybody who goes by how much they have thought about the breathing since the morning. How many times have you thought about your breathing since the morning? You don't have to do the survey, I'll give you the answer right now. Unless the person has a breathing disorder, unless the person is practicing yoga, and yoga meaning mindful yoga that involves pranayama, not just gymnastics, poor man's gymnastics. The person, I guarantee you, would not have thought about the breathing at all for the whole day. Because we have taken it for granted. It happens automatically. The brainstem takes care of it. So because it happens automatically, we don't value it, we don't work on it, and hence what happens is that nobody's thinking about it. So what is happening is that the moment you start to let the mind come into it, and yoga is all about mindfulness. No mindfulness, no yoga. Mindless yoga doesn't exist. If it is mindless yoga, it's not yoga, ayoga. Viyoga, ayoga. It's not yoga. The moment people start to bring the mind into the breathing process, yato mana tata prana. Where the mind goes, the prana, the life force flows. And that is why when we perform this, what we are doing is that we are enhancing the mindfulness of the process. So because people have not been mindful of it, there's a lot of toxins, there's a lot of negativities. So when you do the pranayama, these all will come up. And people say, oh, I started pranayama and I felt bad. Why you felt bad? Because you didn't know what was happening. Suddenly you started, it's like a room that has not been opened for 5 years. It has all the dust, it has all the junk, all the cobwebs. And you go inside, open that room, you think you're going to be okay, you're going to be sneezing and coughing and, having a tight chest from all the stuff that is accumulated there. And that is why it is important to first cleanse it out. And that is why the Mukha Bhastrika, when it is performed 3 rounds at the beginning of pranayama practice, you are making sure you have cleansed stuff, preliminary cleansing. You then do the pranayama practice, and now some more deeper stuff comes. Those stuff that is under. Patanjali talks about this when he says you deal with the samskaras that are there, you have cleaned them away, and then anya samskaras start to come up. They come from deeper. The toxins that come up now during the pranayama practice, by doing Mukha Bhastrika at the end of the pranayama session, you are eliminating them. And that is why the Mukha Bhastrika at the beginning of the pranayama session, Mukha Bhastrika at the end of the pranayama session gives you the maximum benefit of whatever pranayama you have been doing during that session. So we have seen Nasarga Bhastrika, which is basically in, out, in, out. And what you are doing is, it is more focused here. When we do the Kapalabhati, it has a similar Bhastrika type of pattern, but there the focus is more here. So it is more and there the inhalation is not so active. It is more the exhalation. So it's more of a, so it's more from here. Whereas this is more like, the Nasarga Bhastrika is more thoracic. The Kapalabhati is more from here. So it's more a, and of course, in the Kapalabhati, you have to remember it is for the Kapala. So the exhalation is the apanic flow going up and out, and the pranic flow comes in, the apanic flow goes, prana, apana, prana, apana, prana, apana. And what you do is you set up a beautiful cleansing up here by doing this. Okay? So Kapalabhati as one of the Bhastrikas is another way to also look at it. Because there's always a big debate. Is Kapalabhati a pranayama or a kriya? Because it's mentioned in the Hatha Yoga texts as a kriya, as a shatkarma. But in our tradition, we can accept it in both. Because as a modified type of Bhastrika, Kapalabhati as a type of Bhastrika, when you bring in the visualization, not just as, then it is definitely a kriya, no doubt about it. But when you bring in the visualization, and as you breathe out the apanic flow going out, as you breathe in the pranic flow, with the visualization of the energy moving through the Kapala, then definitely it is a pranayama. So the kriya becomes a pranayama when you become aware of the prana and apana, the equal and opposite energy flows, and you become mindful of what is happening in the Kapala. But if you are just doing it as abdominal pumping, then it is definitely a kriya. Coming back. So now we have the Nasarga Bhastrika, then Nasarga Mukha. So it's a, and this we do a lot when we do the shake. For example, when we are doing the shaking, and maybe you can join me for a little bit of this. What we do is we do the shaking, okay? So you do a nice shake, kicking the legs a bit. We've been sitting for some time. And you give a good shake, shake down, shake in front, to your sides, up, down, in front. And then what we do is we take all the Bhastrika. So we have shake, get all attention, a good shake. As fast as possible, fast, so fast as you can. Catch hold, take in a deep breath through the nose. And now out through the mouth. So this was an example of a Nasarga Bhastrika. So a Nasarga Bhastrika is where you are breathing in the nose and out the mouth. Another example is the Malla Kriya. So you are standing, you take in a deep breath and blasting out through the mouth. So we were breathing in the nose, blasting out the mouth as we came down. This is the Malla Kriya that the Mal Yudh people used to use to strengthen the system. Because you have to have a good chest, you have to have a good respiratory capacity, endurance to be a Malyud. That Malyud Veera, the Malyud warrior, he had to have that. So you open up the chest, breathe in through the nose, out, in through the nose, out. So here, what we are doing, in the nose, out the mouth. It could be used as a throw away. So in, out. Or it could be used in the Malla Kriya. Again, we use it when we do the Surya Namaskar and we come into the Mevasana. Okay? When we come into the Mevasana, here we do a Nasarga Mukha. So it's a... And we try to use the diaphragm fully. So it's a... So we were using the Nasarga Mukha Bhastrika is used in various practices in the Gitananda tradition. So in the Mevasana, when we are doing the Aruna Surya Namaskar, the 10-point Surya Namaskar, 10-step Surya Namaskar, if you do the back bending, it becomes then 12. In that, in the Mevasana, we do it. Now when you do it in the Mevasana, it is even more enhancing the effect because now the head is below the heart. You have changed the gravitational flow between the head and the heart, where the head is below the heart now. It is a big change. So we use the Nasarga Mukha Bhastrika there. We often do it with the Ushtrasana. So you can do the Ushtrasana, come into the Ushtrasana, and then you do the practice. So if you are doing the Ushtrasana, and then you do the Nasarga Mukha Bhastrika, so it's a... And you try to keep the emphasis. So, amazing practice. Many years ago, we had some children on the beach doing this. And after doing this Nasarga Mukha Bhastrika and the Ushtrasana, one of the kids bent forward and a huge ascaris, you know the worms, nematode? Ascaris lumbricoides, it's a huge white worm, came out the mouth. Those worms are so common in our children. One of the reasons why malnutrition occurs. These worms get in and they eat all the food and the kid becomes thin. Patle ho jate. They become so thin. Malnourishment because of it. I've seen some horrible cases when I was doing my medical training at Vidarbha. Vidarbha is one of those regions you get all the malnourishment cases. You get it there. It's crazy. But you know what? Because that worm, what it does is that it lives in the air passages. And that is why when you do this, what you're doing is that from the stomach and from the air passages, you can get this worm out. Ascaris lumbricoides. Ascaris. Google it and it will tell you about that. What you're doing is that you are enhancing the capacity to exhale, which is lacking in most people. So, Nasarga Mukha Bhastrika. Nasarga Bhastrika. Okay? And Mukha Bhastrika, which was one breath in and then multiple breaths out. And then the birthing process and then coming back up. We of course balance it with the Supta Vajrasana normally for the Loma Viloma concept in our tradition. So we have looked at three aspects. Now, there is another very, very important type of Bhastrika in the Gitananda tradition. And this is a practice that is called Anunasika. Anunasika is basically like a Neti being done with air. Okay? Normally when we do the Neti Kriya is done normally using the warm saline. And if I have to give one practice for yoga practitioners during this time, Jalaneti. And if you are used to doing Sutaneti, please do that also. It will be the best protector of the present moment for yoga practitioners. Now, teaching it to a new person, especially online and all, is a bit dangerous. But if you know how to do Jalaneti and Sutraneti, please do it daily, because that Jalaneti is going to prevent you from getting this virus very, very much. For the simple reason, if your respiratory apparatus is healthy, if the respiratory immune apparatus, there is a respiratory immune apparatus also. The lymphoid tissues have a specialized type. They call them GALT and MALT. Gut associated, mucosa associated. The mucosa associated lymphoid tissue, which is your immunity, is also in the respiratory passages. But what is happening is, because it is clogged up, our respiratory passages are clogged up, the immune system is sort of put down. So it is like you have tied the hands behind the back for all the security people. You have to let them free. So when you do the Jalaneti, what you are doing, or the Sutraneti, what you are doing is you are freeing your immune system to protect you better. Now, it doesn't mean you will not get it. Okay, people say, I was doing Jalaneti and I still got it. Well, that depends on multiple factors. But there will be less chances, definitely less chances, because you think about it as mucosa associated lymphoid tissue, MALT, mucosa M, associated A, lymphoid L, tissue T, MALT, like ragi malt. There's GALT and MALT. This is a very important part of your immune system. And the Jalaneti will definitely help with the Neti. But that's a different topic. Imagine doing a Neti, but with the breath. Now, normally we have, when we are doing, we have the Vata Sara, Vahini Sara, we have all those type, Agni Sara. So the cleansing practices could have been done with water, they could have been done with cloth, for example, Vastra Dauti, or you do Vaman Dauti. And again, even in Basti, there is a Basti with the water, and there's Sthala Basti and Jala Basti. Similarly here, what we are doing with the Anunasika Pranayama. Anunasika Pranayama is like the Jalaneti, like a Neti, but with the wind. Okay? Vata Neti. Vayu Neti. That's a nice one. Vayu Neti sounds good. We have Vata Sara and also similarly. Coming back, how is it done? It is done by only through the nose. It is like a Bastrika. And it is similar to the Mukha Bastrika in that you breathe in once and you breathe out multiple times. You remember in Mukha Bastrika, we breathed in once and then we breathe out multiple times. Yeah? Here it is done through only the nose. Inhalation through the nose, exhalation through the nose. But the exhalation will be multiple blasts. So for example, you breathe in and then, so it's not, that is Nasarga Bastrika. This is Anunasika. So what you're doing, one inhalation, multiple exhalations. So emptying completely. And what is done is, you do this on the right. Okay? So you then do on the left. And then you do both. So this is called Anunasika. And it gets out a lot of stuff, okay? It's an amazing practice to clean the nasal passages. I tell you, that is why I say it is the wind Neti. The Vayu Neti or Vata Neti. Definitely yes. What the Anunasika? Anunasika, Anu means an atomic breath. So it is like the atomic power. Now you are using the power of atom. What is an atom? It is small. So the short breaths are being used here. So what we do, the one round of Anunasika is to breathe in both nostrils and out. This is first. And what you do is, this should be done at least 6 times. Okay? Now starts the tough part. Again. 6 times. Then right. 6 times. Then left. 6 times. Then both. 6 times. This is one cycle. Now this Anunasika can be done as a sadhana. Sadhana is different, therapy is different. General yoga class is different. Right? We just did it two times. 6 times is 1. Then you know what you have to do? You do 1 round on day 1. It's a 6-day sadhana. 1 round of the practice on day 1. The next day, 2 rounds. The next day, 3. The next day, 4. The next day, 5. And the next day, 6. And by the time you come to the 6th day, you don't have a nose left anymore. I tell you, it's an amazing sadhana. Keep a towel in front of you, please, because the stuff will come out will be amazing. It is an amazing cleansing practice. Now, even if you don't do it as a sadhana, couple of rounds of it in the morning. And this is a practice that I suggest you do after you do Jalaneti. Because after you do Jalaneti, there's a tendency for the water to be stuck inside some of the concave. So there is a tendency for water stagnation, and that could lead to infection later if you're not careful. So people say do Kapalbhati. Because they don't have Anunasika, so they say do Kapalbhati. Because in our tradition, we have the Anunasika as a separate practice. I suggest the Anunasika should be done after you do Jalaneti. Because if you do Jalaneti, you have loosened up all the stuff. And when you do this, it will come out amazingly. Who should not do Anunasika? I would be a bit careful in people who have hypertension, especially if the blood pressure is not within, say, 140 by 90 or maximum 150 by 95. Anything above that, it could increase the pressure. There is an issue. If people have a history of nasal bleeding, if there's history of nasal bleeding, please avoid it, because definitely that means that some of the blood vessels are weak, and this is a very forceful practice that could cause issues. Otherwise, definitely yes, couple of rounds of it is not going to be bad. You don't have to do it as a 6-day sadhana. But even if you do a couple of rounds of it after the Jalaneti, it would be a very effective tool. Now, I'll give you one more tool here. Jalaneti, followed by Anunasika, followed by Bhramari Pranayama. And you don't have to worry about your sinuses ever again. These are amazing practices, I tell you seriously. Because what it does is it loosens up, cleanses, and then it enables the vibration to clean at a more subtle layer. You're doing the water cleaning, the air cleaning, and then the vibrational cleaning. It's a 3-in-1 cleaning process when you do it this way. Jalaneti, followed by Anunasika, followed by Bhramari. And you have gross, subtle, and causal. Sthula, Sukshma, Karana type of cleansing being done, and the rhinosinusitis. People who have the constant problem of the sinuses, which then triggers off an asthmatic attack. Yesterday, I was asked about this by a dear friend. She's a medical doctor, settled in Germany. And she was asking for her young child who's 8 years old, who has constant mucus. And this would be the type of practice. If the kid could learn to do Jalaneti, would be great. You want one more, you want a 4-step. Before Jalaneti, add in steam inhalation. Steam inhalation will liquefy the solid mucus. Okay, that is what steam does. It humidifies the whole respiratory apparatus. So the steam will break it down. The Jalaneti will start washing it out. Anunasika will clean it out even better. And the Bhramari will make sure that the subtlest of cleaning occurs. this would be a very beautiful therapeutic program for those who are willing to make the effort. Many people prefer to do it other ways, that's their choice. So coming back to the Bhastrika, today we have looked at the concept of Bhastrika, which means a bellows breath, and this bellows breath is a very important part of cleansing. We have seen that you can do the cleansing just through the nose, which is Nasarga Bhastrika, where there is an in and out, and this usually is more thoracic. So there's a more type of action with it, Nasarga Bhastrika. We have seen the Nasarga Mukha Bhastrika, breathing in the nose and out the mouth, so and using it with shake and throw, using it in Mervasana, using it in Ushtrasana, using it in Mallakriya, so many places that it can be used. The third we have seen is the Mukha Bhastrika, where you take in a grand yogic breath, Mahat Yoga Pranayama, and you expel it with small bursts through a puckered up lips, that is the Kaki Mudra, coming down to Dharmika Asana as, and then the birthing process with the head coming first, the breath lifting up. And then we have seen how the Kapalabhati, which could become a type of Bhastrika in this perspective, where instead of just looking at the abdominal pumping action, because it's more of the abdominal pumping action, that one starts to also utilize the visualization. As you breathe in, that the inhalation has the prana coming in, and this forceful exhalation has the apana, and the apana, the prana, the apana, the prana, the apana, the prana, setting up a beautiful cleansing pattern in the skull, a Kapala Bhati. And that is where the cleansing occurs. When the visualization and the awareness of prana, apana, and this area is brought into it, it can become a pranayama. If it is just done as abdominal pumping, forceful exhalation, it is definitely more a Shatkarma. And that is why Kapalabhati is a Shatkarma that can become a pranayama when the awareness of prana, apana comes in, and the mindfulness of that region and how the energy is being changed. So that changes it. We have then seen the Anunasika, a practice where it is the explosive atomic breath through the nostrils, where you take in one breath and multiple exhalations, and then you do it on the right, the left, and then both. So both, right, left, both is one cycle. In the sadhana, it becomes 2 times on second day, up to 6 times on the 6th day. A very beautiful sadhana to cleanse this upper part of the respiratory apparatus. We also talk about the focus of the mind on the Nabi. When you are doing the Bhastrika, if you focus on the Nabi, it can also become what is called a Nabi Bhastrika. And if you focus your mind while you are doing the Bhastrika on the anal and perianal, the root area, Mooladhara, it can also become a Moola Bhastrika. So there can be a Moola Bhastrika, there can be a Nabi Bhastrika. The Bhastrika that is done at the chest could be called a Hridaya Bhastrika in that way. And maybe with the Anunasika and a focus on the throat, you could have a Kanta Bhastrika. So these are the ways that the Bhastrika, by the choice of where the mind goes, starts to take on a different quality. And these are just some of the Bhastrikas. Swamiji used to say there are at least 9 versions of Bhastrikas that are there in our tradition. And I've tried to explore and explain a few of them today. Thank you for being with me so long. It's been a full hour today, and a full hour, I'd only planned half an hour, but it's been a full hour. So many of you have stayed with me from the beginning. Thank you for being with me. Keep practicing, keep benefiting, and keep sharing, because sharing is caring. Namaste.